Okay, well, I think we'll make a start. First and foremost, I just wanted to say a huge good afternoon and welcome to my presentation today for the ACE conference on high performance learning and moving out of the box with meta thinking. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Matthew Morris and I am the secondary vice principal here at WEC. And I take a lead on the implementation of HPL in the secondary school. Now, if you have ever attended any of my previous HPL workshops, you will see some similarity and repetition in this presentation, as well as some new input, particularly around meta thinking. I would ask that if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat feature of Zoom for everyone to see. Now, I get really engrossed when I present, and this is a topic that I'm so passionate about. So I probably won't be taking too much notice of what's been written in the chat until the end. You've all been muted at the moment to allow for fluency in my presentation, but then I will then endeavour to answer them either as we go along or at the very end of the presentation. So, for those of you that are new to high performance learning, you may well be asking, what is it? What is HPL? High performance learning is a research-based, pedagogy-led philosophy that sees everyone as a potential high performer. What's really key there is the research-based, pedagogy-led. It is based on evidence. We're not making this up. It uses a unique teaching and learning framework to systematically develop the cognitive skills, values, attitudes, and attributes needed for lifetime success. Now, myself, Mr. Matthews and Mr. Cooper, we attended a 2-day workshop in the UK back in May last year, and we are now well underway to becoming a HPL world-class school. We're already seeing the impact of HPL on our academic outcomes and skill development of our students. HPL was and is pioneered by Professor Deborah Eyre, the founder and chair of HPL, and there are many outstanding schools in Dubai and around the world who follow this philosophy, including schools that you may be familiar with, like Jumeirah College and Wellington International School here in Dubai. Deborah said that more pupils than we previously thought have the potential to perform at the highest levels. Gifted education tells us exactly how to achieve this. There really is room at the top if we systematically nurture more children to get there. What this basically means is that being a high performer is for the many, not the few. And we can nurture this as long as we follow the framework set out by HPL. An important part of this is our relationship with parents and students collectively, which is where our vision for the ACE conference was founded. You may be familiar with the bell curve, which sets a precedent that in every class or school, there will be a portion of low, average, and high ability. And this bell curve features in many different facets of study throughout the world. However, this at times is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it can lead to students, teachers, and parents thinking or accepting that they are or their child is just in the low ability bracket, and there's nothing we can do about it. Our HPL project is about banishing that bell curve away from the classroom and heading to high performance, a progressive and upwards trend for all students to aim for high performance. HPL starts with the basic message and philosophy that everyone can perform highly, and this has to be shared by everyone in your child's life. The formula for success is simple. Every child and those involved around them, such as you and their teachers and their friends, have to believe that they have the potential to get there. Mindset is so important, and we'll move on to that in a little bit of time throughout this presentation. Students also have to be given the opportunity and support. That is where the school and the environment at home comes in. They also need to have the motivation and desire to achieve these. With all of these factors, together with the framework, high achievement is possible for all. A great example of this formula for success is Matthew Said, who has written several books on this topic, and I'm now going to read some passages from his book, Bounce. He writes, in January 1995, I became the British #1 table tennis player for the very first time, which I'm sure you will agree is a heck of an achievement. Sometimes I would marvel at the fact that I had these skills in such abundance that they were capable of elevating me beyond hundreds of thousands of others aspiring for that precious top spot. All this was doubly amazing, considering I had been born into a family in an ordinary suburb of an ordinary town in southeast England. There was no silver spoon, no advantages, no nepotism. Mine was a triumph of individuality, a personal odyssey of success, a triumph against the odds. This, of course, is the way that many who have reached the top in sport, or indeed any other field, choose to tell their stories. We live in a culture that encourages this kind of soaring individualism. Hollywood is full of such narratives, often sugar-coated in American dream sentimentality. But while these stories are inspirational, rousing, and compulsively entertaining, are they true? Matthew then goes on to explain some of this formula. The opportunity, support, potential, and motivation, the HPL formula that was behind his success. You will see number one there. He had the opportunity of a table tennis table. In 1978, his parents decided to buy a full-size table. Number two, he had the support, potential, and motivation from his older brother, who came to love table tennis as much as he did. He had someone to practice with, and regularly. Number three, he had the same in a local primary school teacher who cared above anything a love for table tennis. And in number four, he also had access to a club called Amiga very close to his home, which had a full-size table tennis table and was open 24 hours a day. Matthew Said believes that it was this formula that ultimately led to his success. What makes this story equally fascinating is the impact on the local community. At this point, I would like you to think about how the local community in this story could be where. So at house number 19 with the Saids, where lived him and his brother, who went on to become one of the most successful junior players in the history of the UK. At number 274, Karen Witt, one of the most brilliant female players of a generation. At number 149, Andy Wellman, a powerful player who would go on to win a series of titles. At the bottom of the road, Paul Trott, another leading junior. Keith Hodder, an outstanding county player. Around the corner with Jimmy Stokes, England junior champion, Paul Savins, junior international, Alison Gordon, 4 times English senior champion, Paul Andrews, top national player, and Sue Collier, England schools champion. For a period in the 1980s, this one street and the surrounding vicinity produced more outstanding table tennis players than the rest of the nation combined. Had some genetic mutation spread throughout the local vicinity without touching the surrounding roads or villages? Of course not. The success of the local areas was about the coming together of factors to those that have, from time to time, elevated other tiny areas on our planet into the sporting ascendancy. I love this book, and it is well worth a read if it takes your fancy. Bounce by Matthew Said. But we don't have to see this success of the formula solely in sport or anything particularly huge. We also have to understand that in whatever field, it takes some people longer to get there, but it doesn't mean that they won't in the end. A good example of this is learning to drive. I'm pretty sure that most of you attending this presentation have passed your driving tests. Whether you passed first time or it took you 30 attempts, you passed and you achieved that high performance. You will see from this image that myself and my mum, we passed first time, whilst my brother passed on his 5th attempt. Now, my brother, honestly, is one of the most intelligent people I know. But when it came to learning to drive, he put himself immediately in a box, which sadly was enforced and fortified by my sniggling pessimism and my immaturity as a 17-year-old, that he could not pass his driving test. And that bothered him. He had a fixed mindset and he didn't believe he had the potential to get there. This was because whilst he did have the opportunity, he didn't believe he had the potential. He wasn't giving himself the support and he wasn't getting the support from a loving brother such as myself. In fact, whilst I regret it now, I reveled in his struggle to pass this test. You know, he was a little older than me. I was always in his shadow of success at school. There was an unhealthy competition. He always did slightly better than me. And this was one area that I was better than him. But I do see now that was wrong. Eventually, through perseverance, motivation, and growing support for him as I aged and became more mature, he did achieve that high performance and he passed his driving test. Now, I've talked about mindset, and for me, this is of utmost importance. We have to shift that mindset from a fixed mindset, like my brother initially had when it came to driving, to one of a growth mindset. Now, you may be familiar with these quotes. I've already introduced you to my mum. She had a fixed mindset when it came to mathematics. Even to this day, she says that she just can't do maths. When I now talk to her about it, it transcends from the 1960s when she was in maths lessons that she hated. She didn't have the formula for success that our students have at Wellman, and she's never been able to shift it. I remember feeling this myself when I was a young boy, and my grandmother was teaching me to tie my shoelaces, and I was crying. I was crying so much, I just couldn't do it. And her philosophy and tough stance, I mean, she was born in 1921, and from her days during the war was, as the saying goes, if at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. And it took me ages, but I got there. And I remember crying with joy. However, it's not just the child's responsibility to instill that growth mindset. It's the responsibility of everyone. It's often a fear of failure that stops students from shifting that mindset. But one huge part of HPL is changing how we think and how we behave. That instead of fearing failure, we relish it as an opportunity to reflect, change, and grow. How do we do that? Well, there are 30 attributes that we need to instill in our children in order to achieve high performance. The first set are our 20 ACPs, the Advanced Cognitive Performance Characteristics. And these set out the need to create, link, realize, analyze, and the one we'll be focusing on today, meta-think. I found this image on the HPL website, and I think it's such a useful way to summarize some of these. The second set are our VAAs, our values, attitudes, and attributes that focus much more on the behaviors of our children. They focus on 3 areas of empathy, agility, and hard work. Now, in order to move this presentation forward into meta-thinking, I'm going to play for you a video I found on the internet. It firstly talks about everything I've already shared with you about performing highly through the formula of success of opportunity, motivation, support, and potential. But then it links into meta-thinking, which in definition means thinking about thinking. In relevance to school and the education of our students, that could translate to mean thinking about how we learn best as an individual and utilizing that to perform highly. This video describes this as purposeful practice. Listen out for it in the video. Not just practice and putting the hours in, but making it purposeful. In essence, meta-thinking. Have a watch.
The word talent gets used an awful lot. Sometimes it gets thrown around like a hot potato. Judges on TV shows are always looking to discover the next big talent. They're always looking for extremely talented individuals or groups of people. Every now and again you get somebody who walks onto stage and completely and utterly blows the audience away. We all conclude that this person possesses a mystical talent, something that only few people are lucky enough to inherit. In 1991, a psychologist named Ericsson began his mission. His mission was simple, to discover talent. But he soon discovered a bigger problem. He couldn't find it. He couldn't find natural talent. He couldn't find a single person who displayed world-class abilities in any field without clocking up hours and hours of practice. 10,000 hours of it, to be precise. What he found was that success and mastery in a specific complex task is somewhat circumstantial. It relies heavily on 2 things. Number 1, opportunity. And number 2, practice. 10,000 hours of it. You see, what if Federer had never had a tennis racket put in his hand? What if Earl Woods had never practiced golf in his garage where Tiger sat for hours at a time watching him practice? So Ericsson concluded that opportunity is critical. It's not talent and hard work that make the difference, rather opportunities to gain experience and knowledge combined with the magical formula practice. But what about child prodigies? On further evaluation, child prodigies managed to clock up a staggering amount of practice at an early age through opportunity. Mozart, for example, managed to clock up 3,500 hours of deliberate practice before his 6th birthday. Simply staggering in itself, but compared with another person of any age who has practiced for the same amount of time, and the ability gap might not be far from the same. My daughter is a ballroom and Latin dancer. She's been dancing for 6 years, and I estimate that she's probably done somewhere between 900 and 1,100 hours of practice. Now there's a long way to go before she reaches the magical 10,000 hours, but it's impossible to force somebody to practice for that amount of time. She has to want to practice. She has to have made the decision for herself, and in fact she has, because we can't stop her from going to practice. She wants to go that much. She started to win events, but it's all down to having more practice time, and the environment her wonderful dance teacher has created for her. Abilities are remarkably similar in people with the same amount of practice hours. It's hard to believe that you, your kids, or anyone can become great with practice, but the evidence being uncovered is rather convincing. Prodigies are made, not born. But unfortunately, it's not that simple.
I'm just going to pause there very quickly because it's this part of the video now which talks about purposeful practice, and that's the link with the meta thinking and how we have to be thinking about how we're learning, not just taking it for granted.
The type of practice has to be purposeful and deliberate. Take walking, for instance. Why don't we get any better at it? Why don't we get more efficient at it? Why don't we become world-class walkers? The answer is simple. We're not thinking about walking when we're doing it. We're thinking about what we're having for tea. We are thinking about anything but walking while we're doing it. We're not pushing ourselves to do something we couldn't do before. We're on autopilot. Training deliberately means aiming for a target just out of reach. Feedback is crucial to deliberate practice. Let's say a golfer is practicing putting from 10 feet. He misses to the left. So next time he adjusts his club face to hit the ball further to the right. But how does he know for sure what happened? How does he know what to adjust? He missed left, but how did he know if he did or didn't aim there? The feedback he got could have been inaccurate. The mindset you have is extremely important, as you know. With a growth mindset, you blame nothing for failure. You believe you will improve with effort. You believe the hand you are dealt is your starting point. With a fixed mindset, you believe your ability is fixed, and the hand you are dealt cannot be improved. You blame failure on lack of intelligence and not lack of effort. Having a growth mindset is highly superior, and it's been proven over and over again. Just listen to the next interview on TV with a great sports person. Every sentence will be based around growth and improvement and effort. The best players manage to cultivate a complete faith in their ability. So the keys to mastery in sport are opportunity, practice. The type of practice has to be deliberate. Feedback, it has to be accurate. Mindset, adopt a growth mindset. Belief, eradicate doubt, ignore evidence that promotes its very existence.
Okay, so I really hope that that video has helped you to understand the idea of purposeful practice and ultimately meta thinking. It uses the idea that of walking when we're not thinking about walking. I, within music, often think about how I got to where I was with my piano playing, and I used to tear my hair out. It was so tough. And it wasn't until I reached a point where I realized that actually I had to practice. I would do anything I could to get out of it. But more importantly, I had to think really carefully about how I learn best. Okay. My brother started piano lessons a little bit earlier than me. So I tried to do everything in the same way that he did. And I just wasn't making as much progress as my brother was on the piano. That was because we're different people. We learn differently. I had to find my own way. I had to find the right route for me to make progress, which was different from my brother. And that was the start of my process in meta thinking with the piano. Now let's look at this in greater depth. In order to be successful academically, You need to acquire a repertoire of ways of thinking that enable you to make sense of information, create new thoughts, and know how to approach and unscramble complex ideas. We have known since the 60s that academic success comes when individuals construct understanding and meaning by linking single events together to make a pattern or a scheme. And thinking about how you think helps you to be a more effective thinker. Thinking about thinking, or meta thinking, can be broken down into the following chunks. Decide what you think is the best way to tackle a problem. Plan. That simply means to plan. Break complex problems down into manageable chunks so you know where to start. Think about what you find easy and think back to previous mistakes so that you can avoid them this time. This relates to reflection. You should also be confident in your choice of approach, but be willing to change if the first approach doesn't work. I have seen this so many times in teaching. I see it particularly with the exam classes, to be honest, where students revising for a test, they stick to the way they know and they don't do well on the test. And then the next set of exams, they revise in exactly the same way and they still don't do well on the test. What they haven't done there is think really carefully about what works for them. You have to be able to be resilient, but also try new things. If my brother had just attempted to pass his test in the same way every time, he wouldn't have passed in the end. He must have done something different. And lastly, while failure is not ideal, it's okay as it helps you know what to do to avoid next time. See it as a key part of learning and don't be afraid of it. And I know I'm not a parent, so I can't sit here and patronize you. I know it's the hardest thing to see your child fail. When they audition to be in the school show and they don't get a part, and then you're emailing me to say, why hasn't my child? I know there's emotion there. It's hard. But what's important is that we nurture that and we use it to grow, not to knock them down, not to ruin their confidence, but instead to go, right, okay, what didn't work? What can we do now to improve? I want to, and you know, I'm saying is in terms of, I've skipped my oh, it's not even there, never mind. I want to finish off by reassuring you that we have trained all of our staff in HPL and we are working as a school to ensure all of these objectives are met. You know, but I often get asked by parents, how can I help as a parent? And you know, well, here are some strategies I found on the HPL website. Play up the importance of effort. I mean this in no criticism to where we live, but sometimes I have found students who think they just deserve to be brilliant at something, and when they're not, they struggle to accept that and they give up. They give up far too easily. That's the fixed mindset. I've sometimes had students say to me, oh, well, it doesn't matter because I can work in my father's business or something on those lines. And that really comes from a fear of failure, I think. Feed their curiosity. Get them excited. I mean, where it says there, you know, about being curious as well, it's the impact you can have on as parents simply by asking them how their day has gone. I see it. I see different realms of this in my experience at WEC and the school productions that I do. I see some students who get picked up and they don't talk, they just head off and that's it. And then I get others who embrace and hug and they're like, how's your day? Like, tell me about it. It's that engagement, which as parents, you know, you're just going to excite them, feeding their curiosity and being curious yourself, building their self-esteem. So instead of, why didn't you get the part in the play? Why didn't you make the squad in a negative way? Right, what do you think didn't go as well? What can we do now to build that up? It's also about knowing when to step back. We always want to fight the battles for our kids. I see it as a teacher all the time. Okay, I love the students at work. You know I do. And I always want to be there, but sometimes we have to allow students to make those mistakes and for them to figure it out themselves, because there is obviously a whole world out there. That links to the next one about support. Be there as a guide, but don't necessarily take over and make all the decisions. Celebrating effort. I think we're really good at doing that. But that's something you guys should share in too. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here. Those of you that have signed up to watch this are the ones that actually and actively care about your child's education. Asking the right questions, but I really feel passionate about this. Don't crowd out the fun. As I've said in previous workshops, students might have the most outstanding lessons, but they're not going to remember that amazing maths lesson they had when they were learning trigonometry. What they will remember is that final against some other school where they won the tournament, or being a principal character in the school show and receiving that standing ovation on the last night. That is what that's what they're going to remember, and that's the fun. So don't crowd out that fun by being just solely focused on academic achievement. And then my last slide here, some ideas linked to really the last one, which I've stolen from the HPL website, about continuing to support learning from home, conversation, talk to them, encouraging them to read. Oh my gosh, that is why my brother was as bright as he was, because he couldn't put a book down. I just wanted to be everything that my brother wasn't. I made it such a competition. I just did not want to do anything that he wanted to do. He picked up the guitar, I picked up singing. But I wish I picked up reading, because all of the evidence shows how important it is. Praising the effort, letting them take responsibility for things, having ownership, taking pride in something that's their own. Also, it's not on there, I feel really, really passionate about sleep. I've had this conversation so many times, and I know some of the other ACE conference presentations are around things like this, but mindset and well-being, sleep, diet, exercise, hydration, it is so important. And whilst I might be biased, the arts, music, drama, so important to encourage that cognitive function and growth mindset. Thank you for taking your time doing this presentation. I can't take credit for it all, but I do want to thank the HPL team and the plethora of resources from their website. Of course, courtesy to Matthew Said and his book Bounce. I also want to thank Simon O'Connor, who's the principal at Jamaica College, for sharing past presentations and resources. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the chat box. I'm going to stay here for another couple of minutes. If you've got any questions, there's also 2 books for your recommendation there. Okay, well, thank you for your time. Any questions you want to ask, you can type them. Everyone is currently muted, which I don't know if it's going to surprise you or not. So I will wait here, and you can ask anything you'd like. It's lovely to see so many familiar names as well. So many of our loved parents here. Rahan has just written the kids' version of the Bounce book is a good recommendation too. I absolutely agree. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it's so good. And I remember you and I talking about this before. You Are Awesome. Yeah, really, really good book if you want to check that out. No problem, no problem. Thank you to those of you that are writing. Oh, I should have said thank you to Gemma Thorney as well, who's here from JC. I stole some of her resources on the HPL website as well. Oh, thank you, Rana. I hope you've all been enjoying the ACE conference though. This same session is on at 1 o'clock tomorrow, so yeah, it's a repeat of this one, so yeah, you don't need to attend that one. Okay, I'm going to assume that no one has, oh wait, hang on, I'm not on everyone here. Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. I'm going to assume that, as I haven't had any questions, that we're good to go. It's 1:30 now, so I will leave you to it. Stay safe. I hope everyone's okay. We obviously miss you very, very much at school, but yeah, keep up that social distancing. I've become a real avid. I don't know what to say really. I'm just on it. Every time I see someone who's not wearing a mask, I'm challenging them from my window. But yeah, okay. Well, thank you everyone. It's really lovely to see you and hear from you. I'm going to end this call now. So thank you. Bye bye.